My porch is the poetic platform that parallels with patience and power. Designed with discipline and shaped by culture, my porch is focused on forward. My porch has a foundation of faith, the solid rock where I stand. My porch is audaciously optimistic, nestled in knowledge, unwavering and resilient, strategic and intentional, and deeply dedicated. My porch is cemented in creativity, conscious and confident. My porch is artistically molded. Jean-Michel Basquiat, Salvador Dali, Frida Kahlo, Carrie Mae Weems, Gordon Parks, Dorothy Lang, Hans Zimmer, Lauryn Hill, John Batiste, Raw Digger, Mos Def, Frank Sinatra, Roberta Flack, Nina Simone. Yes, it's diverse. It's community. My porch is photographically framed, cinematically scored, rhythmic and lyrical. It's movement. My porch is my showcase. It's my life. It's my story, my canvas. My porch is my art. And this art is a language, and every medium is a different dialect. This is my porch. The foundation of Tales from the Porch is really, it starts from curiosity. I had this sense of curiosity to answer a question, and the question really was, are the stereotypes true about certain sides of Buffalo? And there are stereotypes that people have about the East Side, and that's where I was born and raised. And I wanted people to see what I saw, and in order to do that, you have to investigate. You know, it's a creative problem-solving process. Like, okay, what do I use to investigate? And that's through photography, film, poetry, or what have you. And so I went into those neighborhoods, whether the East Side, the South Side, whatever the case is, to answer a question: are the stereotypes true? Realistically, at the core, everybody is human with their own perspectives, their own thought processes, and everybody's just trying to live the best that they can, carrying whatever weight that they have, whether good weight, bad weight, or what have you. They're trying to make sense of the world. And so throughout that process, I was just trying to make sense of my world while also sharing it with everybody else. So the foundation is, it's a curiosity, but then there's also this humanistic, like everybody is a human, and I want to amplify the voices of the community through art. My thought process behind naming the series Tales from the Porch was really tales and porch, and thinking about the porch as this place that everyone gathers together and shares. You know, people have their first kiss on a porch. People have barbecues, and a lot of people just meet at the porch, and they're offering these stories, and there's laughter, and there's sometimes sadness. There's a lot of wild things that happened on my porch growing up. I just feel like it's a position that is it's not all the way private and not all the way public. It's in between. And it's a place where stories can be shared, but that's the physical porch. And then you have this like metaphorical porch where it doesn't, like the porch is a platform. Like I utilize what I love, my creativity is my porch. It's an opportunity for people to learn, and then for me to learn, and to add value to other people, and for people to add value to me. And I'm telling my story, my tale, if you will, on this particular platform. You're sharing, parts of you, your story, what you do, what you love, your passion, and different people within the community are sharing their voices in this particular way. It's like, if I could have everyone see what's in my mind, it's like the world sitting together and listening to the stories that are being shared through people, through their lives and how they live out their life, or their canvases, if you will. That's why I love storytelling and the art of storytelling, because I can share my heart. I can let my heart bleed on a page through words and creativity and through all these different, mechanisms and techniques to have someone else feel something. And then sometimes just sitting and listening actively to somebody say what it is that they've gone through and how they've gotten to where they've gotten to. I think that Tales from the Porch, for the larger community, is an opportunity to hear other voices, a diverse amount of voices. It allows for people to see a diverse amount of people telling and sharing their own story from within the community. It allows for people to come together and work and collaborate and to tap into their skill set in order to help something bigger come to life. Hey, what's up? My name is Itina Fareed Cook, and I am a creative human, creative art strategist. I'm a mom, a wife, an entrepreneur, and the list can go on and on. But like I said, overall, I am a creative human who I really feel like I've been placed on this earth just to utilize these gifts, talents, and skills to amplify voices through the creative arts. And Tales from the Porch is this opportunity for different creatives to come together, to collaborate, to capture these voices, to amplify these voices in many different ways. And for this particular one, I wanted to focus on artists. And for this particular Tales from the Porch 4, it's titled Art is a Language, because I truly believe that art is a language and every medium is a different dialect. And throughout this process and this journey together, you're gonna learn about 5 different artists who I really feel strongly that are amazing artists. But these 5 stem from Buffalo Art Studio, and I just really wanted to share their voices with the community at large.
I am a freestyle calligrapher. I use languages to create my work. To be more specific, I use letters from English, Arabic, and Bangla letters and kind of deconstructed them and remade them on my own script. And the idea behind it is to really bring these 3 group of people together into something common. We have differences of colors, we speak different languages, we share different beliefs, but we all have this thing in common that we all appreciate beauty, and I'm creating something that is hopefully beautiful in those languages. People are able to look at the work and see resemblance of letters from their languages, and that brings them together and creates conversation between each other, even though 2 persons might be from 2 very different backgrounds, but they're able to recognize letters and symbols from their own language and able to start a conversation about life or just the artwork and how they're able to somehow connect to something that is beautiful. When we talk about optimism and happiness and really accepting life as it is, therapy played a huge part in that, and I am super privileged and lucky to be able to have access to therapy. Before that, I think it was a lot of anger, rage, and there's a lot of fire that was pushing me forward. At this point, it's more purpose driven and more happiness driven, and constantly asking, is this space making me happy? If this space making me feel safe, if this work is making me happy and bringing joy to my life, does it have a bigger purpose than my own? I started to look into, as a individual person who's living in this city in Buffalo, sometimes around 2000s, and like, what can I do by myself that could have some sort of positive effect? Then I started to look into a lot of traditions that we had where there's no disagreement, there's no debates, there's no, hey, we don't like it. Universally, we all accept it and we find it beautiful. That's when calligraphy came up, the classic Arabic calligraphy. Even though there's a lot of negativeness that was happening in the media about Muslim people and Muslim community in general, but then we all accepted this tradition that got passed down through teachings and from like thousands of years. Although I was here and somehow things that happened thousands of miles away from me, somehow I was being held responsible to say sorry for those and somehow take ownership of those things that people did somewhere else. That was very upsetting that like every time some sort of incident would show up in the media, we have to kind of say sorry for that. Then I started to think about like, what does that mean when we say sorry? Because when we are saying sorry for something, that means we are taking on a blame for something that we are not responsible for.
Yeah.
I stopped doing that. I stopped
Good.
saying sorry for that because it's not me, it's not my people, and why should I apologize for that? In calligraphy, there was no disagreements between any groups. And I decided, hey, what if I were to bring this in Buffalo? So I initially tried to learn the classic Arabic calligraphy, but being in Buffalo, not having access to people who would taught that, it was difficult. I started to look into Middle Eastern graffiti artists, and from them, a few of them really stand out. Al-Said, for example, he's a French-Tunisian graffiti artist. The Hafiz, Zepha, he came up, an amazing Middle Eastern graffiti artist came up, how they're able to kind of take the same language and really make it beautiful. I tried to do that early on. I think 1 or 2 years later, Al-Said was in New York, and I decided to just drive there and meet him, and we started a conversation that, hey, what if you were to somehow mix your own language and do what I'm doing, but with your own language, because you're not an Arab person, you're from Bangladesh, you speak Bangla. So when I came back, then I started to think about how do I mix Bangla into it. Then I thought about my work where like in this part of the world, nobody is able to read it anyways. So the idea of having something that's readable, it's already not happening. So I decided to kind of mix Bangla, Arabic and English and just made something that's very abstract. Took the letters from those languages, broke them down and rewrote them on my own. If you look around the studio, they're this like very they look very serious and they're very like abstract. There's a lot of splatters and like emotions and stuff like that, and also there's that work which are just playful, colorful, and without really any like sort of deep purpose or deep force. Something that makes me happy, something that I wanted to try, something that I just wanted to draw just because I could and just because I wanted to. It doesn't have any sort of like, okay, this is a message that I'm trying to send, or this is a message that I'm trying to build, or whatever. It is
Just
what
do
it
it.
is, and just something that I find beautiful.
I like that. And I think that's like the deeper meaning is the why you started. And then the practice
Yeah.
that the activity, the work, like each piece doesn't have to have like, oh, this right here, it means that, we are coming together, or what have you. The reason why you picked up the brush was because,
Yes.
what you shared. And then with every canvas, it's just an outgrowth from within.
Cut the ribbon, cut the cake, pour the glass and cut the steak. Let's celebrate, the sky's the highs. Let's celebrate, through the lows we toast. Cut the ribbon, cut the cake, pour the glass and cut the steak. Let's celebrate, the sky's the highs. Let's celebrate, through the lows we toast. Celebrate. Creatively, I'm a savage. I'm building ladders. Now, let's build a castle. Yeah. imagine. I'm in my satchel when I work my passion. Protect your balance and slow your fastness. Yo, you ain't grown no grass yet. Control your assets.
Based off of your idea of where knowledge comes from or stems from, or those sources, in what ways do you continue to engage in watering this knowledge, not only in the art space, but just you, yourself, your life, your porch, how you exhibit yourself?
Even though I consider myself somewhat of a, maybe introvert a little bit, a lot at times. I look at what others are doing. In other words, I go to museums, I go to galleries. I interact with other artists here and there, or they with me. But I like to know what others are doing in the arts, and I mean arts, and other than just the visual arts too. So, movement, and theater is important too. It helps me be a part of something, be in a space, even if I'm just coming here all the time, back and forth, but not being isolated. For me too, just an example is I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico to participate in a workshop, a printmaking workshop. And something I like to do, to just go away and work with other people I don't know. Sometimes might be a visiting artist who is just really experienced in his or her area, and I'll want to go work with that person for a week. And so that's just an example of what I'm always open to. If I go to an exhibit or something and I see, I might see an end product, meaning the image on the wall, or I'm sitting on the floor or whatever. And I have no problems with, if it's some process through which it was created that I think I might want to find out about, or that I might even want to use, that I might be quite familiar with, but I see the way that person uses it. I don't have any problem with exploring myself. I'm not going to ever be that person or creating exactly what they created, but as far as approaches to work, materials, tools, all of that, yeah, we do. We use the same things over and over again. Each of us are individuals, so we're not going to use it exactly the same way another person uses it. Your images aren't going to be the same. So I always encourage that. Looking and seeing what others are doing, because it's still a community. And this is me. Everybody, there's some folks who may not know I'll just say other creative people. And of course, some of that too depends on what your particular medium is or area is. For instance, in theater, it's likely you're going to be working with some other folks. Kind of thing you do, it's likely you won't be solo like all the time. And I think the visual arts can lend itself, though, more so to being almost like introverted and
Yeah, definitely.
doing your thing, and that's it.
You could definitely get lost by yourself. I think it's important to experience different mediums, and that goes back to this idea of art as a language. Each medium is a different dialect. The more dialects or the more mediums you put yourself around, I feel like it expands your perspective, which adds value to the work that you do.
I think that's a great thing to do, especially in your building, you're growing. Ideally, you don't stop growing, up until you transition. But I also will emphasize that within that growth and just finding out what others are doing, maybe even getting to know certain other artists who work with other materials, it's one of the ways of becoming really knowledgeable about something is through working with it and doing it and exploring it, ups and downs and the inside and the outside. So that's how you grow, and that's how you know. And that takes time and repetition and asking questions of yourself, of others, and and so on, and making it yourself, or just it's like, okay, how do you go from buying You buy a bag of clay and then you can do it. And at what point do you decide, well, I'm going to make my own clay? That's a whole nother, and where do I do that? How do I do that? Do I go online? Is there some, do I dig in my yard? And it's fun, but then it was like, I realized something about myself that some processes, it just became really laborious to me. I mean, like, it's like, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do the other. That almost seems ridiculous. It says, you're a printmaker, and the way you work on a plate, and then you print, and then you do this, and then you do, it's definitely not this direct, like painting would be, or even photography, I suppose. Although I think if I were doing photography, I would be cutting and,
Right.
It wouldn't be that direct either. But anyway, so much for that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. That's
As the cipher cycles, yo-yos roll like print work. Painting pictures of our predicament, I'm reflecting at the altar session. Aunt Linda and both Grandma Nita say pray for favor and protection. My blessings is family expressions. Loud and vivacious, our circle filled with tea and thread tracing our history. I'm a product of the matriarch. I write just like my mama and grandmama did. So like my great-grandma who taught her grandkids, stitch our 4 generations. So I put my heart in my artwork, collage with the fabric of time. I print paints defined by stew kids and they mamas sublime. My bloodline cemented in time.
No, I left Ghana at 28.
Yes.
Yeah, and so by the time I got to 2, I was probably 32.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So when you came here, you were already an established artist. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine you faced circumstances, what you kind of talked about, where it's like, who? Oh, you're an artist? Like, you just like, usually people look at you like an up-and-coming artist.
Yes.
And sometimes that does stuff to our pride.
Yep.
How did you manage to like have this, and if you had this unwavering kind of feeling like, you know what, I have to do what I have to do. Mm-hmm. You may not understand that I'm an established artist, so let me do X, Y, and Z. Like, how did you deal with, this space of being this artist and then coming here?
It's very interesting because in Ghana, I had a clientele. People were buying the work, but they were not as good. The works were descriptive, kind of landscapes, beach scenes. I would literally go to the beach. It's not far from where we live, and do sketches and all that. And the tourists loved those works. But I knew that the tourists were not necessarily art collectors. You see what I mean? They were just buying keepsakes, something to show that they were in Ghana, but they were not the real collectors. So like my assignments, the assignments I did for my professors, that was the art. But the stuff I did for the tourists was just to take me through college, because my second year I had to take care of myself and my brother, who was also in a different university, so I had to sell some work. So we did descriptive stuff that shows scale. Like a landscape, a cityscape, where we live, the buildings, the cars, the taxi. I painted those. They were easy, you see, because it didn't require any thinking. They were not provocative, And then later on, I realized if I kept doing it, I'm making a name for that, for myself. So I started putting some of the assignment pieces when I go to show them to the tourists, and they started buying those. But then I was like, it's possible to sell these paintings that the tourists consider as crazy, So when I came to the States, I realized that I had to up my game. I couldn't do those descriptive stuff. No, because I wanted to play street ball, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to play street ball. You see, I wanted to play the actual league.
NBA.
Yes, the NBA. Okay, so that required that I had to be prolific. I had to overproduce. I had to make. That's when the phone book came in, the yellow pages. You see, that's when I wrote down all the gallery names in Toledo, Ohio, and I told you, let's go to them. And half of them did not exist, you see. But that gives me an idea of the landscape, of what I'm up to. So I said, in 2 years, everybody will get to know me. Looking back, I had a good education with my painting in Ghana, you know, like, because I knew a lot about Western art history. That helped me. So I could carry on a conversation with the artists I met in Toledo, Ohio. So I made friends real quick because I could talk their heads off, stories and all that. And they asked me where I studied. You see what I mean? And I said, I studied in Ghana. They couldn't believe it. They said, how do you know all these people? Francis Bacon, you know, all this, you know. So that is when I started doing those paintings on anything I could find, painting on doors. So the Northland piece was from that era. And I increased my research. And then I got to go do my MFA at Bowling Green State University, which helped me solidify that foundation that I'm in the true league. I did a couple of street art fairs and I nearly cried. I was like, this doesn't belong. I'm sitting in the sun all day long, you know? I'm like, no, man, I'm just gonna do the studio thing and look for galleries, whatever it takes, even if I'm broke. And I took that route. I went for broke. Yeah. But something has to prepare you to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, something has to, because you have to be knocked out, okay, in so many fights, okay, dust yourself up, stand up and still duke it out. If you've never been knocked out and you've had like 100 fights, the first time you get knocked out, you may not be used to it. The muscle has to be developed bit by bit. You know, it's just like being like a baby, you know, crawling, staggering, you know, walking before you can run. It's the same thing. If you are thrown into the deep end, you'll just drown because you don't know how to swim.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So I think...
It's gradual.
Yeah, it's a gradual, and that is where God comes in. I remember being in college, when I was in my second year, I had a story. I was told that my dad had been admitted at the hospital, so money was not forthcoming and all that. So I wasn't getting my stipend, right? And I didn't have paint. It was actually like getting to the end of the first year. So I would go to the garbage can of the seniors, okay, and look through to see if they've thrown away tubes and figure out if I could grind it. They would never throw away good paint. It's only bad paint they would throw away. So I found some gouache. It was caked. I opened the tubes, removed, and I ground it the way we prepare some dishes, right? I ground it as if I was preparing some food or so. I ground it with a rack. And I put Elmer's glue in it. And I did my assignments. And some guy came to me and he asked me, hey man, what did you get? I saw you grinding your paint. I said, I got A. He's like, damn, George, I got B. And I got paint. And I'm like, yeah. So that same thing is for the puzzle piece. You see? So I use the same thing. I would buy a used car, okay, and sand the rust off, okay? If I have to bundle it, you know, when you see it, you'll be like, man, I'll wax it real nice. You know, and you'll be thinking, how many miles is on it? I'll tell you 200,000 miles when I bought it. I'll take care of it because of how I grew, and I use the same for my art. You know, so if I'm working on a painting and the paint is giving me a problem, I keep it away for years and pull it back out. The same way we make wine, you know. Yeah, you are right. The experiences that I've had has helped me. You know, I mean, there were times I had no food, whole day. My stomach is screaming. And you have a certain kind of pride that you don't want to go ask somebody for food. You know, you're waiting for your mom to show her miracles. You see what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, that really, and people have no clue about that. And how does that translate? It translates into your work.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you tenacious.
It does.
I came from the sediment, dust in the crevices, diamonds and metals there, roll like an avalanche. It's cold, ain't it? Soul painted with a Van Gogh. That's green, that's pain with my medicine, I'm stretched out. I try not to fail again, but man, look, devil came with a heavy hand, trigger happy, getting at me, think he ready for war, yeah, he ready, I ain't ready, but our mama said we don't eat crow, so, no, we don't eat crow, my mama said call up the folks, so, go ahead and open the door, y'all tell.
I would say that I am a visual artist, but I think for me it's a lot deeper than that. Like I think the world really wants to put you in a box when it comes to art, and they say, you know, you're a painter, you're a photographer, you're this, you're that, and they want to keep you in that category. But I think for me, painting is just the language that I found to express, you know, I guess the themes that are important to me in life, and representation, and, you know, talking about family and connection. And, you know, that could easily be something different. It could be through the written word, or it could be through, you know, some other method, I guess, of like being creative. But painting is the language that I found to talk about that. So the strategy behind my focus is tough to put into, I guess, actionable steps, because I think I'm a very like organic, go with the flow kind of person, and then like somehow everything funnels together and works out in the end. But I think a big part of my strategy is just being firm on my convictions as much as I can, knowing the big picture of whatever it is I'm trying to create. So with this show, I had an idea of what I wanted the theme to be, and I wanted it very heavily to focus on creating these portraits that are standing in as representations of a missed history. And so I tried to keep that in the back of, or in the forefront of my mind, really, as I'm creating. Even if that's not a step-by-step, okay, step one, I'm gonna do this, step two, I'm gonna, you know, do that. It was having that intentionality behind what I'm creating and being strategic about that. Well, I think one of my convictions too is, with this show in particular, was really trying to capture Black joy and making this an occasion where I'm thinking about the opening and it's gonna be all of us in a room celebrating and not feeling heavy, and just like getting to look at these images and have it be a beautiful thing. And again, that's for this particular show. There is something I'm working on now that's a little bit heavier, but I think it's a whole different set of goals. So I think being, just firm on what it is that I want for each show, and the tone that I want to set, and how I want the mood to feel when people walk in.
Makes sense.
I mean, I think it's all interconnected, you know, my creativity. I'm inspired when I look at, you know, my life as a mother and what that entails. And I think vice versa. I think, you know, you kind of pull it all together. There was a point when I'm painting this picture where I'm holding my son while I'm doing it. I have a photo somewhere of that I'll have to share one of these days. But, you know, it changes the way that you create. It does for better and for more difficult. You know, it's a challenge. Like I said, your kids have their own personalities, and there's a time where creating has to come second to that. There's a time where you have to put time aside and say, it's time for me to create. And, you know, the baby has to go ahead with grandma now. So I think it's letting both be important to you, and letting both have their own space, and finding those intersections between them as well. And with my niece, you know, obviously she's a little bit older, so the thing with her is I try to always keep my promise. So I tell her I won't make you a promise if I can't keep it. So even if it's small stuff, I say, okay, I will, you know, take you to get ice cream. I won't promise it unless it's something that I know I can deliver on. And because I would do, like you were saying, you feel so bad if you say no anytime. But kids, they have to hear no sometimes. And they have to hear no from us as parents, and they have to see us being complete people as well, like independent of our role as mothers and fathers. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we give to them, is showing them what it looks like to be an individual, and to have passion, and to have like this other part of yourself. You know, you are a mother, but you're also creative. So I think that's a beautiful thing to show your kid, to stay curious, to always, you know, wonder about things, to know that like I don't know everything and I never will. And I think like that's really foundational for me, to make sure that I'm always staying interested, like the same way that I was inspired when I was a kid. You know, I look at something and I want to know more about it, so I dive in and I would just get all the books I could on it, and, you know, just take it as far as I could. Because I think if you're not curious, you know, it's just memorizing facts then, and you don't internalize it, you don't kind of digest it and find a way to turn it into something like we were just talking about. You don't find a way to process that thing that you have and make it into something more. It's just memorizing stuff then. And the fact that, you know, it's somewhere where I want to feel like I'm at home. It's an extension of my home. So it has to be a place where I'm comfortable and I could just sit and, you know, have a glass of lemonade or something and just, you know, be myself. But also I think a porch is an invitation. You know, it's that place where maybe you invite people to come up and be a part of your home, and just kind of sit out and take in, you know, your view and your perspective. So I think my definition of porch would be having a space where there's comfort, but there's also the ability to communicate back and forth. So I guess in terms of my art, if I'm thinking about it, it's having those moments at opening nights where, you know, I'm in my comfort zone and everything's up on the wall and I'm just able to kind of sit back and relax, but I'm also able to share and invest and say, you know, this is my story, and have people come visit my porch maybe and see, you know, what it is that I have to offer.
My movement is both joyous and painful. What was meant to destroy us is what I paint from. A vibrant palette threaded within my fabrics are you. I move to the crescendo of your love. Within the sound of silence, I still hear you in my dreams. Feel you within the wind. Beats burst tears. Constant droplets of love. My endgame gives my chest peace. One of the greatest moves ever made. Rook.
Everyone responds to the world in a different way, both in a macro sense and in the communities in which we live, right? So for me, art is the way I try to digest and react to the world. And my own individual work for sure is that, but also part of is Mirabel Press, where we're doing this interview, is a way to interact with people and help them make their art dreams come true. I think I'll call it barrier, but maybe misunderstanding too, was I didn't think that figurative work was something that one could do as a contemporary artist in late 70s, early 80s. That was probably the primary reason that I said, well, I better not do that full time, and led me to chicken out in a way. As the world has changed, figurative work is actually pretty big right now, but I've always done that in my art practice. I've never stopped doing that. I may have tried to figure out different ways to do it. Been excited about changes along the way and finding people who were doing it in a way that was contemporary art and not pastiche of old masters or something like that. So I do think that was the primary impediment, and to overcome that, I had to start working and saying, okay, well, add some conceptual elements, make it personal. And to get to that was not easy. There's more things in the trash than there were saved in my attic from the time that I was doing it. I think the other thing that I figured out was that you don't set out to make a masterpiece. What you do is set out to create the conditions under which art can be made. Well, when I've been asked to talk about my work in the past, I've tried to say that I'm not interested in making someone comfortable when they look at my work. In fact, it's almost the opposite. I try to make people think about the world they live in. And for some people, they may be hopeful anyway. In my work, I try to make people get uncomfortable enough so that they have to think about what their place in the world is and what they're doing, good or bad. You need a community, you need a network, you need people who you can interact with, and that was a big step for me, opening myself up to at UB and other places when I started 15 years ago, really starting back doing artwork full time. or half-time anyway, and then full-time. I think the collective is stronger than the individual, and while the individual artist still has to go out and make the work, having somebody as a part of your team is really helpful. It's a language. It can be abstract, it can be highly realistic, it can be done digitally, it can be done analog with the simplest tools that you can, charcoal that was used by people in the caves, you know? So you can do it very simply, you can do it very digitally, all of which ends up, if it's done well, is art. Not all of it is done well. And then the dialect part of it, I wasn't intending to say that, but for example, printmaking here is a way to make art. And one of the reasons why Rachel Mejian and I started Mirabeau was to try to foster printmaking as one of the dialects that people choose to speak in order to make their art voices heard. Because you can do things with printmaking you can't do in any of the others, and just like with a language, you know, people can say, I love you in French. It sounds way better than it does in English. And so that's a different kind of a thing. So I agree with you 100%. It's a language. It's a very important language. It's important not just in times of relative good times, but it's just as important. Some of the greatest art in the world has been made in times of chaos and war and economic stress. And so to me, it's an incredibly important language.
And I feel like it's universal. We don't even have to speak the same language to feel and to interpret works of art, which is why I love all types of art. I love the process behind it and the why behind an artist even stepping into a certain space and their creation process. You know, looking at a painting or, you know, ceramic or whatever the case is, sculpture. You know, you can have a room full of 50 people who speak different languages, but still can feel and still can exist in the same space, you know? And that's what I love about art. I've come to understand about art.